Hello everyone, how are you? I hope you're all doing excellent. Today we're going to get started on fixing the power steering leak. In a previous video we did our second draft at hooking up our electric MR2 power steering pump to the FC's power steering rack. And although we eventually figured out and got it pretty much working, one of the fittings is going into a cracked hole in the power steering rack, and that is causing a massive leak that we're not able to fix with any seals or anything. So we're going to need to remove the power steering rack and braze on that AN fitting. First thing we need to do is get the car in the garage here, get it jacked up, get the wheels off, because we have to slide the whole rack out, clean it so we can get this thing ready to braze. Okay, so here's what we're looking at. We have to get the tie rod end off here. And then from up here, if there's enough light, right up here are the retaining brackets for it. And hopefully, as you can see, there's not much clearance. So we'll need to remove the sway bar to get it out. Get that out of the way. And then hopefully we can wiggle it out and slide it out one of these ends. So I'm going to go ahead and pop those off now. Okay, so I got the castle nuts and the cotter pins out, and right down here you'll see the tie rods hanging down. Now what I'm going to try and do, since I'm not installing a new rack, is keep the tie rods so I don't have to mess with the alignment too much. And they shouldn't cause a problem with clearance, but I got them off on both sides, so now I'm going to get those brackets off. Alright, the bracket bolts for the steering rack, the bracket bolts and the brackets for the sway bar. That's right down here. Next step is I need to get the lines I plumbed in unhooked and get the steering column detached. Alright, so the lines are disconnected now, and now I need to disconnect this steering column here. And so this fitting right here, and I'll adjust the flashlight in just a second. There we go. Is a pinch fitting. You'll see there's a through bolt right there that's clamping the steering column into the steering rack. I have the steering column locked in its position with the key out of the ignition right now. So what I've done is I've put a mark on there. So hopefully when I put it back in, I can line it up so I don't have any weird balancing issues with the wheels off to one side. But luckily, if I do, my wheel is detachable, so I can just put it back on a new orientation. But that's the way I'm solving this issue. Okay, so let's see if we can get some clearance here.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, beautiful.
Okay. Now this, can we slide it out?
Looks.
Okay, let's see.
Over here. Yeah, because the steering input shaft is already loose, so.
Yeah, it's separated. So maybe if I twist it somehow. Oh, it's close.
It's really close, but you know, this really thick boy aftermarket radiator doesn't help.
so close. Yeah, definitely if the radiator wasn't there. Let's see. Because I can't go to the passenger side. Definitely.
And it's a little too thick for the driver's side.
Yeah, it just needs to go forward like an inch or two. So maybe what we can do is just unbolt the radiator, hold it up, and then we can get it out real easy.
Yep, probably.
It's only 4 volts, so
yeah,
might as well do that.
That's a good idea.
Okie dokie.
Yep.
Okay, so radiator's loose.
I'm going to try and pull this up from here. Hopefully I'll give enough room down there for Thomas to slip it.
Is this side stuck a little bit? Oh.
I only got... How about now?
Okay, I'm going to try to be quick. And there we go.
It's out. Okay. If you have an aftermarket radiator, definitely just unbolt it and lift it up for a second. Don't need to undo any lines.
Nope.
Just the bolts.
That was easy.
Made life 1,000 times easier, and leave it unbolted so when you slide it back in, you don't have to worry with that.
Okay. ATF. Oh god, wheel.
We are so familiar with the smell of ATF that I'm almost immune to it now.
Okay. Alright, give me that.
Slip it.
Alright, so all of this is because of this. So you can see this part is broken out. We thought we could catch enough threads to make a seal. We never could with any of the fittings we tried. So the reason this is here is because when I put in actually the stock fitting, it was cross-threading. I couldn't really tell because this is aluminum on aluminum. It's so malleable. This is a cast aluminum situation here. And as it's cross-threading, instead of jamming up or doing anything weird, it just pop that out. So anyway, now I'm paying the price, but hopefully we'll get this thing cleaned up and prepped so we can actually braze on it, and then we'll just permanently attach this fitting with the dash 6, and then we'll be looking pretty. So here's our spot all cleaned up. Now we just need to wait for Amazon to deliver the brazing rods. Then we'll get this kicked on, buttoned in here, and then hopefully button everything up and have power steering that works and doesn't leak finally.
It worked, just doesn't look, it leaked.
Exactly.
So it worked for probably running about 10 minutes.
Yep. Okay, sweet. Okay, so we got the blowtorch. We got the rod, so we have a piece to practice on.
Yep. Turn it the other way because I want to do the inside joint here real quick.
Okay.
So we're going to go ahead. What we're going to do is we're going to preheat this, not the rod. And when this reaches optimum temperature, which can be around like 750 degrees, then we can pull the flame away and this will just melt right into this crevice right here. And this is going to be the first time we've actually brazed with aluminum. So we're going to try it, and good thing aluminum heats up pretty quickly, and we should be good. So we're going to try it here real quick, see what happens. actually goes.
Oof, that's the end.
Yep, end of the... So there we actually melted the aluminum itself. We got a little too hot, but yeah, you can see it's just warping and dropping off.
Mm-hmm.
But it works.
Okay. Okay, so we already preheated this just to burn anything off. Now Jeff's going to get it heated ready to braze. Okay, so sorry we had to stop filming, but it took all four hands to manipulate everything correctly. So this is our brazed on fitting, and perfectly aware that it doesn't look as pretty as a weld, but hopefully we penetrated the threads enough to hold it. This brazing is pretty strong for PSI and tensile strength, and this is cool enough now to the touch where we can start manipulating and getting it back in the car. I will say that it was definitely boiling the brake fluid, or the ATF fluid, and it got pretty hot. So hopefully didn't mess with any of the seals in here. However, with the port there and the condition it was, we're looking at having to buy a new one or attempt this anyway. So this is where we're at. But fingers crossed, we'll get it in the car. And
yep, it was either an experiment and buy a new one or buy a new one. So why not run an experiment and try something too while we're at it? So yeah, we'll just put it in the car and see what happens. But it was tricky, especially when you're, because we had it sitting like this. It wasn't a flat surface, so it did run as we tried to turn it, and so we could make it all the way around. But this is actually, even this little thing right here, you can't break that. Ow. Yeah, you're not going to break that off. It's strong. It's freaking strong.
okay, so I'm gonna get this back in the car now, and then we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay guys, so sadly the brazing experiment trying to get that fitting connected to the power steering rack did not work. And the more we thought about it, we're like, well, it has the cracked case fitting where we need the return line to go in. We have the kinked hard line from the power steering rack itself. We have old worn out ball joints. We have who knows what condition this is in because it was never capped off. Who knows how the seals are. Plus we had to heat it up so hot to try and braze it. Like, let's just get a new rack. $200. I'm going to pick it up at O'Reilly's remanufactured rack here pretty soon. I'm going to pick that up tonight. But right now what we need to do is get a few things off our old rack. So we need to get the tie rods off, and I do have new ones, but we need to get these off and then measure so we can get kind of an approximate alignment on each side. And we need to get these brackets off and the bushings underneath, which unfortunately I don't have new bushings, but you know, we'll have to work with what we got, see if we can get this rolling. Alright, so you saw that was a fun struggle. But anyway, here's our old tie rods. And here's a new one, for example. I got the second one coming in a little bit later. So anyway, let me set this to the side because it's still very hot. So you can see here that this little cover is ripped. There's crap in there. So this one is a little bit different, but it's got nice pliable cover. We do need to pack that with grease. Yeah, and switch that over. So anyway, these bushings and this cover, they're pretty easy. They just pry up. So I'll get those pried off and then we'll switch this for the new one. Alright, just got home with the new, fresh, remanufactured rack. Man, does that look better. And I was avoiding trying to spend money on this, but as soon as I picked it up and opened it, I was like, yeah, this is the right decision. Perfectly clean. Now you just got to transfer over these brackets and get the tie rod ends on. Okay, so we got the fittings put in here, so it's ready to rock. Tie rods on, brackets on. I'm a little nervous because these hard lines here were at a slightly different position, so I had to get the brackets underneath them so that the bolts can go through. And I'm a little worried because everything looked the same in the shop, but as I've come to learn, a little bit different can mean doesn't fit at all. So I'm about to throw this rack up in there and make sure it fits. Alright, so I'm working alone tonight, so no extra hands to film, but I got the rack in there. It was quite a struggle because one of the bolts, or one of the nuts that are welded onto the back of these brackets was stripped, so I had to deal with that, but it's in there, it's secure, so now I'm going to get the suspension back together and get the tie rods in, the sway bar on, and then hopefully we can power this up. Okay, so sway bar's back on, suspension's back together, hooked up all the lines down here, filled the reservoir with fluid. So now let's energize the pump and see if there are any leaks, because after all, that's what we've been doing all of this for. Oh, thank goodness. No leaks. Okay, that's exciting. I'm going to turn the pump off and I'm going to go ahead and drop her down, get the wheels on, and maybe take her for a drive with power steering for the first time. Well, first time in like 20 years. Alright guys, so it's the next morning. last night I wasn't really able to film because it was so dark out and it wasn't picking up anything, but the power steering is working great. Feels awesome to drive the car around with power steering after all these years, and that new rack feels nice and smooth. So thank you all for watching. Just after I leave you right here, I'm going to be putting up a simple diagram, handwritten diagram of how I actually finally got this to work, especially for those of you who've been following along for a while and realize that I've been trying to get this project done for quite some time, but finally we've got it working, no leaks, and everything's running well. So I hope you all have a great day, and stay tuned for that diagram. Alright guys, so what I've done here is attempt to do a little hand-drawn explanation of how I actually hooked everything up, and I had quite a few questions about how I actually got it to work, and after using some of the resources online I knew that how difficult it can be just searching through forums. So let me show you how I got it to work. This may not be the most perfect way, but I can tell you the power steering is working great. So there are a few main components. Obviously your electric pump, you're going to need a relay. You're going to need to connect it to power, fuse that connection. You need a reservoir for the power steering fluid because this pump does not come with one. And then, of course, we have our rack. So, let's start with the pump. You mount the pump. There are two connections for your fluid. There's a high pressure out, and then there's a low pressure return. For your reservoir, the larger bottom connection will be a low pressure return line which goes to the pump, connected that with some heater hose, 5/8 I think, and then a high pressure, or still low pressure, but the return from the rack itself. So when you're looking at the FC steering rack, there are three holes. The bottom two are the pressure lines. I've seen some people plug one of those off, use just one. I decided to use two. So from the high pressure out on the pump comes your hydraulic line, tees into both these fittings here. I've left a link below to where to get these fittings, but these two here are M12 by 1.25. You can get those adapted to 6AN. This fitting here is an sorry about the shade, 16 by 1.5. Okay, you can get adapters for those. I've left links in the description below to convert them to 6AN so you can plug them into your lines with your press-on fittings. Now let's talk about the power setup. One of the connections off your pump will go to ground. The other connection is power, needs to go to your relay. Then your relay connects through a fuse to your battery or another power source that can carry the correct amperage. And that's pretty much it, but it took us a long time to get this all sorted out, and I gotta say, it was worth the struggle. The power steering feels great, it's easy to use, and it gives a new characteristic to the car that makes it much more drivable on a daily basis. So hopefully this helps. Please post any questions you might have in the comment section below.